Steve Jones here. I'm in Renfrew, Ontario at the Royal Canadian Air Force Memorial Park. You can see here there's a monument to service people who are from Renfrew or were from Renfrew that served in the Second World War and lost their lives as members of the RCAF, which is interesting to me because both my parents were part of the Air Force during World War II. In fact, I always knew this place was here, but after 30 years of living in town, I never came to visit this place. So, late to the party, but I'm glad I finally found a reason to get here. Unfortunately, that's not the reason. I'm not here for a history lesson. I'm here for something that's happening right now today in society, and that has to do with homelessness. And why the RCAF Memorial Park? Well, geez, if I go a little bit in this direction and up this hillway here, up this pathway along the hill, there's a Tim Hortons up there and there's a Wendy's up there. Tim Hortons, I think, is open for 24 hours. So there's a washroom in there. So there's running water, there's toilets, there's things to drink. There's heat, especially as the weather is getting a little colder here. So those things are all important. And also, there's a coin-operated laundry not too far away, just past that tree line over there. And you may be asking, what's a homeless person need a need a coin-operated laundry for? Friends, can we accord a little bit of human dignity to these people? Nobody wants to be out in a place like this. Nobody wants to be homeless. They're out here for a reason, and it's not because of choice, okay? So we're going to take a look at the possible ramifications of homelessness with respect to a small town like Renfrew, because often when we live in a place like this, we think that these are big city problems, that something like this couldn't happen in a place like our hometown here. And as much as I would love to come up here and tell you that that is, in fact, the way it is, I'm sorry, but I can't. It's completely the opposite of that. There is a homeless problem here in Renfrew. Maybe you can't see it because it is mostly out of sight. People couch surfing and living out of their cars and that sort of thing. But it's around and it's real and it's not going anywhere unless we do something about it. This whole issue came to my attention initially, at least in a local sense, I guess 3.5 years ago when I started walking every morning as part of my daily routine. And so I would park my car here at Walmart and I would make my way towards the downtown area of Renfrew. So as I was walking through here, I took notice of a vehicle. It was a green van, and the green van was there every single day. So you see things when you're on the ground like this that you don't see when you're driving by in your vehicle. And so I took note of the green van, and I started to notice things. First of all, it was there for an awful long time. Secondly, the thing that really gave things away was the fact that there was a little step-up stool that was leading to the sliding doors of the van. And it looked like somebody was using it almost as a step-up leading up into a front or back door of a regular residence or house. And one day, whoever was living there, I couldn't tell if it was somebody elderly, but I couldn't tell if it was a male or a female. But when the door was opened, I guess the day was nice enough for that to happen. You could clearly see how they had the interior of the van organized in such a way that there was a sleeping area, there was sort of a storage area where I would see things like toilet paper piled up and stuff like that. There was little plastic chairs, the kind of thing that you would get at a place like Walmart, or right over there's a Canadian Tire. And so they had done the best they can to make their vehicle their home, which is unfortunate, but good on them for doing the best that they could under very trying circumstances. Why here in a Walmart parking lot? Well, because of Walmart. Many Walmarts are open 24 hours a day. I don't know if this one is. I think this one might be open till 10. Here's the parking spot, by the way, where that vehicle was parked for several weeks. Anyways, I don't know what happened to the person. They're not there anymore. They haven't been here for 1.5 years or so, maybe a little longer, but they were here for long enough. Anyways, back to what is the attraction of Walmart? The attraction of Walmart is that it's open for extended hours. Secondly, it is there's running water in there. There's washrooms in there. They sell personal hygiene products. They sell food there. In other words, Walmart sells just about anything anyone could ever want. whether they happen to live indoors or in a vehicle, or for that matter, and tragically, out of doors as well. So this kind of thing happens all the time. And this isn't the first, or sorry, this is the first, but it's certainly not the only time that I've encountered a vehicle stuffed, absolutely stuffed, where there's only room for the occupant and whatever it is, whatever material possessions that occupant has managed to hang on to as a result of dealing with whatever issue put them out on the street in the first place. But here I'm talking about somebody living in their car. So, and how they had organized themselves in such a way that that they could actually make a go of it. You know, it's not an ideal situation, but they were doing the best that they could. That said, you know, you can go on the internet and you can look up living out of your car, which is what I did, because I was looking for supporting graphics for what I was doing here. And there's a long list of websites you can go to that sort of basically take the idea, hey, you know, here's how to live out of your car. What an excellent adventure. And you can do this and you can do that. And there was just this tone to it that seemed really inappropriate to me. But then I got thinking about it, and you know, thank God there's places like that where people like this fella, whoever that was, could go to and access information and give them maybe a little bit of a leg up as to how to organize themselves so they could survive on the street here in Canada. I don't imagine living out of your vehicle is much fun. And as adventurous as those websites make it sound, I'm certainly glad that I don't have to take advantage of a website like that. So like I said, the tone was a little unfortunate, but at least there's a resource like that. And you're probably asking yourself, how the hell would a homeless person, and I can see that we've got a little bit of rain coming. It's cold and it's windy out here and it's going to get wet pretty soon. One point I can make is that at least when I'm done here, I got a place that I can go where I can get out of these elements. And that puts me way ahead, unfortunately, of the people who cannot. And whether they live in a car or whether they're living outside, you know, they can't get away from this shit. I can. And so back to the point I was making, so what's a homeless person, like how would they have access to the, you know, because I don't imagine the internet plan available for that parking spot or for any of this wooded area behind here, and don't think that there's not people back there. I don't know for sure if there isn't, but that would be a great place, and I'll tell you why in a few minutes. Yeah, the internet sucks, but you know, that's why you hang out in places like Walmart or outside the library or even go into the library, and that's where you get your internet access and your computer access generally. So yeah, they're functional. In many cases, these are people who actually have jobs, but they're forced to live out here outside because they lost their homes, because the banks foreclosed on them, especially during the pandemic, where you know, the banks saw an opportunity to make a buck, and they never fail in that regard. And so if a few thousand people have to end up on the street in a place like Canada so banks can make and protect their profits, so be it. That's the beauty of capitalism, you know, that system that everybody loves so much. Yeah, sometimes the more I think of the word socialist, the more I want to be labeled with that term, because putting people on the streets, the banks get all the money from it, selling their houses that these people used to live in, doubled their mortgages, kicked them out of their house, and sold the house in the pandemic when property prices were going sky high. So they make all kinds of profit, and it's up to you and me, taxpayers, to deal with this situation one way or the other with our tax dollars. A real, personal, human tragedy for a lot of people right under our noses. So my first, I suppose, visual experience with a homeless encampment or people living outside generally was back when I was visiting some friends and family back in North Bay. And I noticed that when I went to a Tim Hortons there up in a place called Tebow Terrace, that part of town, that I ran into a homeless encampment behind the No Frills, which is in that area. And it struck me as a big surprise that it would be there in the first place. And then I started asking the question, well, why there? Well, there was the No Frills there, and the No Frills, being a grocery store, has a dumpster full of, or dumpsters rather, full of things that they throw out on a regular basis before, you know, everything's got a best before date. Dumpsters, unfortunately, if you're out here on the streets or you're out here in the woods trying to survive, you know, your dignity takes a little bit of a hit, yes, but survival is such that a person will dive into a dumpster, no problem. I mean, I've seen this right here in RENFREW with somebody going through the dumpster of Metro and Kentucky Fried Chicken and that sort of thing. As it can happen in North Bay, it can certainly happen in a place like this. North Bay much bigger, of course. But even though we live in our small little town, we're not insulated completely from this. In fact, you can see in the background here a piece of, or a section of tarp. And, you know, I don't want to jump to any conclusions. I mean, tarp is tarp, but, you know, you see a lot of that kind of thing in homeless encampments. So I'm not going to suggest that somebody was living there or is living there, but it's not beyond the realm of possibilities. And as I was looking at things happening out in front of Walmart, I thought I'd take a look and see if there's anything happening behind Walmart. And again, the North Bay experience was one that really caught my attention. In fact, in North Bay, there's several encampments populated by hundreds of homeless people. I mentioned the one in Thibault Terrace. There's another big one at Lee Park. There's another one in Laurier Woods. And then there's another one that caused an awful lot of local concern in a wooded area between Chippewa High School and Alliance Public School. And of course, people don't like, that's very unsightly, homeless encampments and schools. You know, we don't want to affect our children. We don't want them to see this seedy side of life, this seedy side of society. And so after a lot of push and back and forth and this and that, it was decided in North Bay that they would put a fence up around Chippewa High School to the point where they isolated it off from this homeless area. And so now they've got a Fort Chippewa, I bet, right there in North Bay, where there is a fence literally separating the homeless from the children that go to that high school. And while I'm standing here, I might like to share with you this, which is, so this is RENFREW, Ontario here, and that's a tent. Okay, I'm gonna get a better angle on that. Yeah, that's not a tarp. That's a tent, and that's right out here behind Walmart. If I go this way a little bit, you can see Walmart right there. Through those trees, you're gonna find that No Frills complex where you've got No Frills, Tim Hortons. We're going to take a closer look at that because I'm going to drive around over there. And over just between the two, there is a liquor store, a cannabis store. So it's, you know, there is a close relationship between homelessness and addiction. Now, I should make that very clear. Right now, homelessness does not equal fentanyl addiction. Whereas if you look at that conversely, fentanyl addiction almost certainly equals homelessness. And the point that I'm making here is that not everybody that's living in a place like this is homeless because they're addicted to drugs, whether it's alcohol or fentanyl or any of those other things that are causing the major scourge in society that we see right now. So this area in the background is the the western side of the area that I have, I believe I have a graphic for this. It's the area that's got Walmart where I just was over on the eastern side. Then in the middle area, you've got the liquor store, you've got that high-class cannabis place. And then as you traverse this area, which you can see why this is appealing, because there is some shelter there, there's some tree cover. And as I mentioned, there's Walmart, there's the liquor store, there's the cannabis place, everything that has to offer. And over here, there's more dumpsters because we've got, if I turn this camera around, you can see that I've got No Frills over here. And there are dumpsters behind No Frills, of course, that would have the same sort of action happening as you would encounter over at Walmart. And then, of course, as you continue to circle around, you can see right over here that we've got a Tim Hortons. I don't know if I'm actually pointing at it. There we are. There's a Tim Hortons in there somewhere, or there ought to be. There it is. And again, and another couple of things that are nearby that are pretty important is not too far off in that direction. There is the Renfrew County Paramedic Station, the one that's based here in Renfrew. And then, of course, there is the detachment of the Ontario Provincial Police. So there is everything that a homeless person might want in an area like this. There is some established science that indicates, it doesn't indicate, it confirms that homeless people generally have a life expectancy well reduced from the rest of us in terms of early death and the contraction of diseases and all sorts of things that befall a person that's living in conditions such as this. Now, I mentioned the Tim Hortons over here in the background, and you know, I am aware of, you know, for example, a police officer in another community. I'm not going to name the community because I don't want this person to get in trouble. You know, it's got to be tough because, first of all, there's a trust issue with the police, not because they deserve it, but just because they're, you know, law enforcement, and a lot of people who are living in a homeless environment would view police as a natural enemy or somebody that is bent on causing them problems, you know, like move along, we don't want you here, you got to go somewhere else, you know, that kind of thing. And after a while, you're going to start to view police as part of your own personal problem. But I've got a bit of an anecdotal story here. It's not much of a story, but I do know that a police officer in a community not Renfrew, a larger community than Renfrew, took it upon himself he saw 2 or 3 people who were obviously in a vulnerable spot, and he boarded them into his cruiser, and he took them to a Tim Hortons, and he paid for their lunch, and he paid for something hot for them to drink. And they stayed there for about an hour, and the officer said, hey, listen, I'll come back in an hour. That gives them time to get fed, get warmed up, take care of some you know, personal necessities, using the washroom and that sort of thing. And then when he showed up again after the conclusion of the hour, back into the cruiser they went, and it was from that point onward that they were going to look at next steps and see what could be done to help alleviate the situation that these people were in. You know, when I had a heart attack several years ago, I discovered that nurses were heroes. You know, I ought to have known that before, but I learned it from firsthand experience, and they're not the only ones. I would suggest to you that officer is a hero, except for the fact that there is that notion out there that no good deed goes unpunished. And I would imagine if that word of his generosity, his personal generosity, paying out of his own pocket and bringing those people to Tim Hortons, would probably get the guy in trouble. And that's just the kind of thing, you know, we talk a good game. You know, I used to work in a Catholic school. We used to talk about this all the time, you know, where our mission statement, we had a mission statement, and it was all full of great stuff. But you try living some of that stuff and it gets problematic. And I would suggest to you that officer, who I know is not a church-going person, had his own little mission statement, and he saw some vulnerable people right in front of him, and he went beyond that whole notion of, you know, it's not my job, or I'm supposed to stay in my lane, or I can't do anything. That's not what I'm here for. I'm not a social worker, I'm law enforcement. Well, yeah, I get you. If you want to stay out of trouble, that's the attitude to have. But if you want to follow, or if you want to be true, or you want to adhere to a mission statement, I would suggest to you that person, that officer, was heroic in his own right for doing what he did. And mind you, it's the kind of thing that would get you into trouble by the higher ups. You know, mission statements are absolutely fantastic, but oftentimes, sadly, not worth the paper that they're written on. Naive me, I framed mine and put it up in my classroom, and then experience kind of taught me otherwise. So, yeah, if you're somebody who wants to stay within your own lane and play it safe and look the other way and all that kind of stuff and shove things under the table that you don't like the look of, well, all I can suggest to you is, if you're going to take that attitude, you're going to need a bigger table, because this problem is not going away. What exactly are we going to do about this thing? I mean, it's so easy to say, listen, that's not my problem, it's somebody else's problem. You may even think, you know, you may be like a lot of people where you think, okay, these people are homeless for a reason. It's their fault. So they should reap their rewards. They should face the consequences of their bad choices and all that sort of thing. Okay, that's great. So if you happen to be walking out of a church on Sunday and that's your attitude, then I think you're kind of inconsistent with your walking your Christian faith. Whatsoever you do to the least of these, you do also unto me. I believe, who said that? I think that was that Jesus guy. Listen, I'm not trying to be Jesus here, and I'm never going to be accused of that, and I'm not expecting that out of anybody else either. But we can do a little better with our Christian values. We can do a little better at being consistent with our mission statements and vision statements and things like that. We need to do something because people are dying on the streets. Maybe not here in RENFREW, maybe not yet, but you know those parks that I showed you? There's other parks, and if you think it can't happen here, talk to the people in North Bay. Talk to the people of Sudbury. Talk to the people who live in Kingston. Talk to the people who live in Pembroke right down the road. Ask them what they thought if this was going to be a problem of theirs. You know, not everybody who's homeless is addicted to something. Yes, there is a lot of that going on, and yes, there are people dying of fentanyl poisoning and all sorts of stuff, that animal tranquilizers and whatever else they can stick up their arms because they're desperate people. And from what I understand of the withdrawal process for fentanyl, it's a tough ride. It's a very tough ride. So, you know, if you want to have that attitude that it's their problem, so they should have to deal with it, like the bar's higher than that, as far as I'm concerned. My bar's higher than that. What about all the people who are always complaining and bitching about taxes? You know, like, nobody really wants high taxes. I don't like paying taxes either. But, you know, we're going to pay for this problem one way or the other. Like the banks made off famously with the whole thing, and that's great. But what about you and I, ratepayers, taxpayers? We're the people who have to pick up this mess. We're the people who have to pay for it. And I want to say something to you, for all you people who think we can't afford to solve this problem because it costs too much money. You know, when you live out here on the street, not only does your life expectancy go down, but you're going to be wide open for all kinds of ailments that are going to lead you to a hospital emergency room, which, by the way, is warm. So don't rule that out as a place where sometimes they seek shelter. But I'm talking about the people who actually get admitted, people who have serious ailments that are not helped one way or another as they live out here on the street. And so I just need to point out to you that there are some sobering numbers. It costs somewhere in the area of $30,000, $31,000 to keep somebody in the hospital for a month. It's pretty expensive, of course. And who do you think foots that bill? That's you. Now, we can all lock them up and put them in prison, put them in provincial jail. I mean, that's the new mental health facility anyways, right? If you don't know what to do with somebody, incarcerate them somehow. Well, it costs about $11,000, $12,000 in custody. So there's that. That's pretty expensive too. What about homeless shelters? They cost money as well, but they cost about $7,500. What costs the least amount of money is the thing that we should be doing right from the get-go, and that is that we should be building supportive housing or locating supportive housing for these people. And I understand there's a housing crisis in Canada. I get that. But this is part of it. And we need to do better. And if we want to do better, we can do whatever we want. And we shouldn't let money get in the way. Every time the police have to respond to a service call, every time RENFREW County paramedics have to respond to a service call, every time a social worker, a firefighter, or anybody who's even remotely connected to this issue on the ground, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars of salary that's being directed towards a homeless person. And that homeless person could end up in the hospital, and they could be there for a somewhat extended stay. That's just not right. And it's just not the efficient way to do this. Listen, some people are doing their bit. RENFREW County has the MESA program. MESA is not an acronym from what I understand, or at least I wasn't able to figure out what it stood for. I think it's just the name of the project. All well and good. So you've got the RENFREW paramedics, especially in Pembroke, actively going to where these people are to be found. See, they've got this novel concept. Let's go to where our clients are. Let's go to where the people are, rather than just sitting around waiting for their tragedies to come to our attention and respond to them. Let's do a little proactive stuff rather than waiting for the shit to hit the fan. Why don't we get out there and do something good for our fellow human beings, regardless? Let's take the argument that, you know, they did this themselves. Well, friends, come on. When they were all in grade 5 or grade 6 and Miss Smith was handing out that old "what do you want to be when you grow up" assignment, I'm sure none of them sat in their classroom and wrote, "Oh, you know, one day I want to be homeless, and I want to be addicted to fentanyl, and I want to have a criminal record, and I want to be a vagrant, and I want to steal things, and I want to go around in dumpsters." We have an obligation, friends, the rest of us who have things better, to do something to help them out. So we can do something. Kudos to the police officers and the paramedics and the firefighters and the social workers and all the people who run the grind in Pembroke. Hats off to them. They're your local heroes, friends, because they don't judge you when you come walking through the door. They just see another human being there that is desperately crying out for help.
These are people like you or I, and just a few decisions led this way, and that's what MACE is about, is getting the county in on it, getting the paramedic service in on it. You've got us, you've got the hospital, like there's so many partners in this MESA project. And
they help them. Right behind me here, I've got another such place here in RENFREW. Now, I don't know everything that there is to know about it, but it's called the RENFREW Area Connection Center, and I believe it's run under the auspices of the Ontario Provincial Police. I know that there is a police officer that is dedicated to this place. It's right here in downtown RENFREW. It's very open. It's got big windows, very welcoming. They always have something happening in there. They're like serving food, having special things for kids and that sort of thing. And you know, as I said, I don't know all the ins and outs of this place. I know it costs money. I can't tell you that it would all come out of the OPP budget. They're probably, if they're like many other places, they probably have access to government grants and that sort of thing. But the thing about government grants is that they run out and they're not necessarily renewed. And so while this place is doing a great job handing out naloxone kits for treatment, it's an anti-opiate that helps with people who are suffering from fentanyl overdoses. You know, it's just a wonderful hub where the police, who used to have or they still do have a program called the CERT program, where an officer and a social worker will work as a tandem to go, again, excuse me, find these people where they are and try and do something about it. You know, this place has been open for, I guess, a year or two. I'm not really sure. I walk by here. It's another place I discovered as part of my morning walk. But nothing is guaranteed to last forever, right? And so you never know how close a place like this is to having its funding cut off for whatever reason, some political reason, or they're taking heat because they're spending so much money on this. And you know, the police have worked really, really hard to overcome that stigma that they're a threat. And when you actually see them doing what they're doing in a place like this, again, you don't have to look far to find your heroes. So, you know, this is the smart way to do it. You know, if we could find housing like in places like Toronto, where they set up these sort of Airbnb type things, where, you know, they filter out who meets the criteria to go into this housing. Certainly, I mean, they want to get the right people in the right place, right? But I mean, that when I say supportive housing, they've got a social worker on permanent staff at that location. The people that are there have access to emergency medical services via the internet and medical networking. But they have their privacy. They have a place to go. They have a place where they can have their dignity, where they don't have to feel like the dregs of the earth, where they don't have to walk around and be judged by people who have never really faced the experience that they're facing right now. Again, there's no kid I ever knew of that wanted to be a vagrant when they grew up. You know, back to the police officer in that other community that bought them coffee and kept them warm for a while and stuff. And I know that not everybody does that, and kudos to that officer. But a lot of people might say, well, what? Okay, fine. So you helped 3 people out for an hour and you kept them warm. What's that in the great big grand scheme of things, right? Well, if you think stuff like that doesn't matter, maybe you need to ask the 3 people that guy helped. You know, as far as I'm concerned, I'm just some guy. I'm just Joe Citizen, right? And I'm out here mouthing off. But, you know, as far as I'm concerned, if I help one person, then it's all been worth it. I'm Steve Jones.